Joined on the phone now by our friend Robbie Hummel, Big Ten Network, ESPN basketball analyst. The basketball Buckeyes, after that 12-1 start, 3 straight losses. They got a game against Maryland coming up tomorrow. I want to talk to Robbie not only about the Buckeyes, but also this Big Ten conference. Robbie, how you doing? And you've been traveling, looking at a lot of different conferences, and of course you're working the Big Ten Network. You see a lot of the Big Ten. Is this league the best league in the country right now?
I think yes. I just think the depth, and it's really going to be. And you guys have seen this up close here. There are times in your schedule where you just go through the gauntlet.
Yep.
And Ohio State is dealing with that right now. But I think for the Big Ten this year, Michigan State are clearly 1A and 1B. They're the 2 best teams in this league. And I would say Maryland, who comes into Columbus, I believe this weekend,
Friday night. Yep.
Yeah, is probably the 3rd best team, even though they almost blew that 20-point lead to Wisconsin. Then I guess you'd put Purdue and Iowa are probably 4 and 5, maybe Nebraska in there as well. They got a big one tonight against Michigan State, and then it's like Minnesota, Wisconsin, Ohio State, Indiana. Not in that order, but just kind of thrown in there as well from kind of 6 to 10. So there's no easy nights. As we saw last night, Minnesota goes to Illinois and just gets crushed. Ohio State goes into Rutgers and loses. Life on the road's hard. This is a tough conference, and winning on the road is as difficult as ever. It's you got to hold serve at home, and you got to beat the teams that are behind you in the standings.
Yeah, that's why that loss last Wednesday, losing at Iowa, that's going to happen. That's a really good team. It's a top 25 team. From Ohio State's perspective, the Rutgers loss is a really tough one, but there's a lot of season left, and Chris Holtmann can overcome it. But I'm curious, Robbie, from what you've seen of Ohio State, this was supposed to be a rebuilding year. Maybe we got a little spoiled here with the 12-1 start. Maybe there's a little reality setting in as this team goes through growing pains with new players meshing with older players like C.J. Jackson. What is your take on this Ohio State team? And if it's going to be an NCAA tournament team, what do you think has to happen for them?
Right, and I think you're exactly right. The expectations probably got thrown a little out of whack just because of the way they started. And Chris Holtmann has done such a good job. I think he's a terrific coach. I think his staff is excellent. And I'm guessing if you asked Ohio State basketball fans at the start of the year, will you guys take this record of 12-4? They'd be like, yeah, that'd be great. But then you start winning some games, you beat some good teams, you win some games on the road. So you start expecting more and more, but then you look at the roster, there's a lot of freshmen and sophomores playing.
Yep.
And I thought it was a very telling quote, and I really appreciate C.J. Jackson's honesty about needing to practice harder, but I think you kind of wonder from that, if this is your senior point guard and he's saying he's not practicing hard, and I saw where Chris Holtmann also said it's not all C.J.'s fault. It by no means is. But, man, as a senior, your time is running out.
Yep.
And when this is over with, it's done. You can't go back and fake your way in to get some more eligibility. It's over with. So you're running out of time, and I think you wonder who is the leader on this team. There's no Jayshawn Tate. There's no Keita Bates-Diop. Both those guys led last year's team, one by vocally and the other more so by example. But there are a ton of freshmen. I think Keyshawn Woods is an experienced guy, but when you've transferred into a program, it's so hard to go into that leadership role because you just haven't been around as much as the other guys. So it's going to be interesting. They got to right the ship, and it doesn't get any easier as we talked earlier. Maryland, Purdue, at Nebraska, at Michigan. That's yikes.
That is not easy. Yeah, 3 in a row can spiral into 6, 7 in a row, and you can be playing good basketball, but just not winning those games. Visiting with Robbie Hummel, Big Ten Network analyst, also working for ESPN. In fact, he'll be doing TCU and Kansas State tomorrow night, Saturday night rather, for ESPN. Robbie, you mentioned C.J. Jackson in there. Can you talk about like last year? He was a good scorer for Ohio State, averaged 13 points a game. But if he had a lousy game, it was no big deal because Keita Bates-Diop was there. Jayshawn Tate was there. To a certain extent, at times, Cam Williams had good games and stepped up.
Right.
So there wasn't pressure on him necessarily to have a good game. How difficult is that an adjustment for a guy? Even though he's a senior, he's never had a role where we need you to score like 15 points a game and not turn the ball over. Is that an adjustment that sometimes is difficult to handle?
Absolutely. And not only that, you're dealing with higher expectations, but you're also moving up the food chain on the Sky Report.
Yep.
And that makes a big difference. All of a sudden, instead of being the guy that opposing coaches are maybe, you're the fourth or fifth option on a team, all of a sudden you're number two. And they really key in on you, and they're going to do some things to make you work and put you where you're going to maybe your weak hand or whatever, but they've just put more time into defending you because coaches understand, outside of Caleb Wesson, who is the guy that's going to give them, or not them, but this Ohio State team, a scoring punch at the second option. And I think early in the season we saw Keyshawn Woods, but he's really struggled to shoot the basketball in the last 3 games. Luther Muhammad, I think he's a really good player, but you look at the stats, and last 3 games he's been last in plus-minus. Now, that doesn't tell the whole story. That can be deceptive in certain ways, but the guy that for the first 13, he was so good. So it's just, it's been a night-to-night process with this team on who is going to be the guy that steps up. But you're right, C.J. Jackson's a senior. He's been through it. He's honestly made huge shots in his career at Ohio State, but needing to be a little more consistent, that's for sure.
You mentioned Michigan and Michigan State as the separators in the Big Ten, that they're clearly the 2 best. This Michigan team, undefeated, they've never had a start like this, 17-0. They're poised if they can, they got a tough game coming up, but if they can win, they may be the number 1 team in the country after Duke losing. What is it about this Michigan team that jumps off the page at you when you watch them? How are they doing this?
Well, the thing that's crazy to me, and I just think back to when I was playing, when we would play Michigan, we were never worried about them guarding us. Mm-hmm. We knew we could score. They'd 1-3-1 you. They'd match up zone you. They'd maybe get in a soft man-to-man. It wasn't a concern to think, man, are we going to be able to get a shot up tonight, which right now it is, because they can play small and they can switch 5 ways. They can go big with Teskey, and he's had a terrific season. He protects the rim so well. So they're really versatile, and they can switch ball screens, and they've got a lot of guys and a lot of athletes that can really lock you down. And the evolution of John Beilein from an offensive coach, and where he still is a very good offensive coach, there's no question about that. His stuff is as good as any in the country. But they are so good on both sides of the basketball, and, man, they're just scary. They are really good, and it's going to be fun watching Michigan State match. Yeah, that's going to be a heck of a game.
Michigan State tonight plays at Nebraska. I know I think you were just at Nebraska last week, I believe. Yep. I think I was watching a game there. Yeah, and you mentioned that arena has always been difficult, but now Nebraska is like legitimately good, and so it's really difficult. You feel like Nebraska has a shot at this one tonight against Michigan State?
I do. I was there earlier in the season for the Creighton game, and that was a huge game because Tim Miles' record against Greg McDermott is now it's 10-1, but at the time it was like 10-0 or 0-10. Sorry, it's
right.
1-10 and you get what I'm saying.
Yes, I got you. You've never beaten them.
They hadn't beaten Creighton, so the crowd was just so amped for the game, and it was an incredible atmosphere, really cool environment. And I would assume it's going to top that tonight. Last year they didn't get a shot at playing any of the top echelon teams in the Big Ten at home. They got Minnesota early before the Reggie Lynch stuff kind of imploded the team, which was a good win for them. They got Michigan there. I think Michigan was ranked like 23rd. They got them in late January there, but they didn't get a shot at Purdue, Ohio State, Michigan State at home, so they didn't have an opportunity to get one of those signature wins in Pinnacle Bank. So I think they have a great chance to win tonight. I worry about their depth, how physical Michigan State is. Foul trouble going to be an issue. You look at that Indiana box score for Nebraska, and it's like Glenn Watson, 38 minutes, Thomas Allen, 37 minutes, James Palmer, 35 minutes. So especially at the guard positions, foul trouble cannot happen for Tim Miles' team. And honestly, they're not that deep from a front court perspective either. So we'll see. It's going to be a good game, though. I'm looking forward to it. All
right, Robbie, before I let you go, one question more about Ohio State, and you were just mentioning foul trouble. Caleb Wesson has been terrific, but the last several games he has had this tendency to pick up a couple of quick fouls early. Ohio State fans, and I'll raise my hand too, at times I'm like, was that really a foul? But, I mean, they're calling them. Is there something to that? Do you get a reputation as a guy that's going to pick up fouls? How do you coach a guy? How does Chris Holtmann try to coach a guy through that Caleb, we need you on the floor, yet at the same time, he needs to be the aggressive person that he is to get position down low and things like that. How do you manage a situation like that with a guy that keeps getting in foul trouble?
Right, and I do agree. I think that you can garner a reputation, and that can be a part of it. I agree that some of the fouls have been ticky-tack, and I think Chris Holtmann would tell you that. I just heard you say it. I agree with that. It's tough. When you're a guy that gets in foul trouble, and I was like this in high school. I had a heck of a time not getting 2 fouls before halftime. And it's really you cannot get any silly ones. You cannot give fouls away. And I think for him, if that means, on the defensive end of the floor, somebody's coming in there, maybe you don't challenge quite as hard early in the game, that you're more valuable on the floor than you are on the bench. So I think he has to understand the situations he puts himself in. Now, offensively, it's hard because he does a good job of posting hard, which he should. He ducks in hard. And sometimes that looks to an official, if you're over-aggressive with it, they'll bang you for an offensive foul. I think he got one, I forget which game I was watching, where he just posted up and happened to get somebody with his off arm, and it's an offensive foul. And I think it might have been the Iowa game.
It was the Iowa game, yeah. He got called for 2 offensive fouls.
He didn't do really anything,
yes.
but there is contact, and they call it. And it's like it drives you crazy. It's unfortunate because you don't want to, foul trouble stinks. I'm sure that a lot of people would disagree with this, but I would love to see college go to 6 fouls, probably because I was in foul trouble like my entire freshman and sophomore year at Purdue. But I just, it stinks when you see a guy has to go to the bench, and I guess the argument to that would be, well, it's part of the game, don't foul. But I guess I'm just, as a consummate fouler, I wish it was 6.
Yeah. Hey, doesn't our Robbie and I both are Valparaiso, Indiana alums? Doesn't Valpo High have another kid going to Purdue basketball-wise, or am I nuts on that?
Yeah, he's a top 100 kid. I was supposed to go see him play on Saturday. They were going to honor the Bryce Drew's '94 state championship team, but it got snowed out. So I didn't get to go back.
Snow in Valpo?
I haven't seen Coach Funner in like 4 or 5 years. So.
Yeah, snow in Valpo? Who would have known? Yeah,
well, actually, it was in South Bend. The team they were playing was from South Bend, and they got hammered pretty good.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Hey, Robbie, you do great work. Appreciate it, and thanks for taking a few minutes for us. Appreciate it very much.
No, of course. Thanks for having me on.